I invite everyone in this moment to just take a nice, deep, cleansing breath, breathing in cool, calming oxygen. And as you release the breath, release all that no longer serves you. Let go of any doubts or any tension. Wash away any stress or anxiety. Let it just go for now. And if you feel so inclined, go ahead and take another nice, deep, cleansing breath, welcoming in the light of today. And as you release this breath, allow your body to just relax in this moment. And allow your mind to be here now. Universal love enfolds me. Universal wisdom inspires me. Universal spirit enlightens me. Universal power encircles me. I am one, and all is well. As we begin this inner healing process, let me invite you to relax in quiet confidence, opening yourself to the miracle-working higher power. Now symbolize the unity of your thinking and feeling nature by touching your chest with your hand, and let my words act as your own, for your own inner healing, acceptance, and receptivity. I acknowledge that there is a power, intelligence, and wisdom greater than my own. I am in the midst of it, and it is in the midst of me, sensitive and responsive to my every thought, word, action, and feeling. I now make this true for myself by saying aloud, I acknowledge. Acknowledging this higher power working through my life, I admit that I am personally responsible for solving my own problems while being guided and assisted by something greater than myself. As I am ready to surrender the conflicts of my ego to the wisdom of this infinite presence, I simply speak these words. I surrender.
I surrender.
Knowing that forgiveness is the key to unconditional love and the feeling of heaven, I now unconditionally forgive anyone and everyone who has ever injured me in any way, real or imagined. And I now forgive myself for all of my mistaken judgments and their resulting actions. From my deepest level of understanding, I now say, I forgive.
I forgive.
Realizing that I continually experience the effects of my own thinking, I now choose to allow this higher power to recreate me deeply, filling my mind with thoughts that are only positive, constructive, loving, and beautiful. I call upon this divine inflow by stating aloud, I choose.
I choose.
I now center upon that one special idea that I'm willing to accept as real for me in this coming week. visualizing that idea as already acted upon and brought to pass. In seeing my idea become a fact of my experience, I enjoy the happiness and peace of my thought fulfilled and gratefully speak these words. I accept.
I accept.
Knowing that I have an everlasting place in the midst of the power that sustains all creation, as well as the support of all those around me, I allow myself to relax in the peace of fulfillment and gratitude and say, I release.
I release.
Now, in my mind's eye, I envision the presence of someone near and dear to me. This can be a friend, a family member, a teacher or mentor, someone who has touched my life in deep and loving ways. Someone who may not be physically present in the room with me this morning. I turn toward that image in my mind's eye and say, I'm grateful for the good in your life.
Grateful for the good in your life.
Now I open my eyes, turn to the world around me, and joyfully speak to anyone physically present in the room or virtually on this broadcast, and share in confidence and gratitude and saying, I'm grateful for the good in your life.
See, you get these stories in your head about how things are and how things have to change, how you have to conform to certain rules and regulations. I was sitting there during the inner healing experience that Danielle leads us through every Sunday. And she says, put your hand on your chest. And that actually, the text of that says, put your right hand on your chest. She changed it to hand because not everybody has a dominant right hand. You know, just put whichever hand on your chest. So I obeyed, like I always do. I sat there with my hand on my chest, and she went through each of the stanzas, and about stanza 5, my arm got tired. So I took my hand off my chest, put my arm in my lap. Do you know, I had a flinching, momentary sense of, uh-oh. Because this is a spiritual practice. I found myself being ever so fleetingly superstitious. We hew to these things. We still, it's like it's ingrained in us almost from our training. It is ingrained in us, many of us, that there's a certain way to do spirituality, and if you're not doing it right, if you're not following all the rules, then you've broken the spell. And the power that made everything, suddenly it's disappointed in you. And it kind of shrugs and turns away. And then you have to go through a whole bunch of what they call in some faith systems propitiation. Isn't that a nice word, propitiation? You have to go through all sorts of deal making and winning it back and so on. What I'm here to share with you this morning is that spiritual practice is easier than we make it. It's a lot of what we share here in our classes and so on, because our nature is fundamentally spiritual. See, this is the thing. We're not like corrupt worm of the earth sort of beings that have to cobble together some sort of spiritual life and persuade ourselves and persuade the deity, you know, that things are different than they are. Instead, there is one life, and that life is spirit, and that life is all the life there is, and that life is the life that we're having right now, no matter what. Even if we're making a mess of it, even if we're deeply unhappy with it, it's still the life that we are expressing. You cannot not do spirituality. The worst thing that can happen is to do unconscious, unaware spirituality, in which case you don't benefit from it as much. You live in anxiety, you live in neurosis, you know, and a constant fault finding and fault checking within the self, but the truth of you is uncorrupted. The truth of you is pure and holy. You are not only a spiritual being, you are the spiritual being. You are the spiritual beingness. You are the spiritual beingness. Now, I know, and I don't have to go into all of this again, but I know there are people who say, well, wait a minute, he's saying we're all God. Yes and no. Yes, there is one life, and that life is therefore your life. For if it were not your life, there would be more than one life, would there not? There'd be the one life, and then your life, and then somebody else's life, and pretty soon we're back in the same soup we were in. There's one life, and that life is your life, but you do not encompass that life. You do not entirely possess that life at the personal level, at the ego level, at the level of personality. That life is equally distributed throughout all creation. What makes you different is that from the chair you're sitting in, let's say, is that you have self-conscious awareness. Okay? So that's the nature of our spiritual life. It's easier than we make it. And what I wanted to share with you today, specifically, comes from some writings by a woman named Hazel Dean, D-E-A-N-E. You may never have heard of her. She wrote for Science Mind magazine in the 1930s, just as Josephine Holmes Curtis did, whose work I shared with you last week. Hazel Dean wrote this piece, and here's what we're going to do today. I'm going to share it with you, and then some thoughts about it, okay? And we'll have you out of here in plenty of time to have a nice lunch and enjoy the rest of your Sunday, but filled with some new awareness that you can take through your week and benefit from, because this is strong stuff, and it's different than a lot of us grew up hearing. Says Hazel Dean in Science Mind magazine, March 1935 issue. She says, I stood on the edge of the forest. All around me and before me, as far as the eye could see, were the trees, awe-inspiring, mighty in their majesty. Here breathed the solemn dignity, the hush of the forest, the holy temple of the Lord. Here pushed the stillness and pulsed. Here pulsed the stillness and peace of God. I kind of ruined that last line, so let me give that to you again. The hush of the forest, the holy temple of the Lord. Here pulsed the stillness and peace of God. She stood on the edge of the forest. Now, we'd ask her, which forest? Big forest, little forest, California forest. Where are you in this forest? Forest might have been entirely in her own imagination. And that's why I share it with you. Now, you and I live in a sort of wooded area, around here. But this forest is portable that she's speaking about. This forest is the forest of the imagination. And you could even turn it into a beach or a mountaintop or some other landscape if you want. But for the moment, so as to not have this fall apart entirely, let's keep it as a forest, okay? So you have this forest and you carry it with you and you stand there and it's awe-inspiring and it's peaceful and it's calm. This is spiritual practice right here. This is the spiritual practice that you take with you, bless you. This is out into the world. Because she'll go on to say how we struggle and how we deal with, and life is so busy. And in these modern times, 1935, in these modern times, there's so many pressures placed on us. We need a spiritual practice that's portable. And that is the interior landscape of consciousness that we take with us wherever we go, that is only a choice away, that we can create this image in our minds of a place that's peaceful and holy and loving and kindly and good, and where our problems do not follow us in at the level of being problematic. So we're not in this place short of money. We're not in this place with our knees still hurting. We're not in this place with unhealed relationships and trouble and conflict and upset and all of this. We're in this place where those things have not only never occurred as such, they're not possible. They're just not possible. Doesn't that sound lovely? Such a place really exists. Now, what you may rush to add, as folks often do, is, well, that sounds like copping out. That sounds like putting your head in the sand. Well, it would be if you kept your head there. We don't stay there all the time. It's spiritual practice of a spiritual dimension. Then there's spiritual practice of a material dimension. There's spiritual practice of a commercial dimension, spiritual practice of a physical, organic, even biological dimension. This is spiritual practice of a spiritual dimension, and you do it periodically. Often, if you get the chance, but intensely if you don't. Often if you get the chance, but intensely if you don't often get the chance. You go to this place where nothing has ever been wrong, and you drink deeply of that in what she calls awe, A-W-E. Another term is astonishment. You stand in astonishment at the beauty and the wonder and the majesty. And also, where did all of this come from? I'm standing here in the middle of this forest. I didn't plant this forest. And even if I did plant this forest, and I've been around a real long time to see it grow up, how did it grow up? Because I don't know how to make a seed grow. Something knows how to do that. A system that preceded me, that I interacted with by planting this acorn that grew into this mighty oak, but how exactly it did that and how the oak fleshed itself out as a tree from the tiny little space that it initially occupied. I have no idea how that worked. So I'm in awe of this. I'm in astonishment at how this life works. That's the spirit that we engage with in this spiritual practice, this overtly spiritual dimension of practice, where we're in this place and we're living in absolute awe. And then you know what happens? It's time to go to work. It's time to make dinner. It's time to do the laundry. It's time to get back into ordinary activity, but we carry the spirit of this with us. We carry the sense of this with us through what we do, and we can revisit it regularly. Now, sometimes we create this image. We decide, all right, he said a forest, so I'm going to think about a forest and the last time I was in one and what it looked like, and also what it smelled like, because forests have, distinct smells, and what it sounded like, because things were chirping and creeping and doing what they do in forests, and of course how it looked, and maybe even how it sort of tasted, because smell and taste, are deeply connected, and you might not eat off the forest floor, but there's still kind of that sense of something up in the sinus area, about this. And so you've put together this image based on what's been suggested. But sometimes what happens is the image comes to you unbidden. So I'm going to let you in on a little something in me of, I have places like this that I go, because I've been doing this particular practice a really long time, even before I knew about Science of Mind. I've been doing this, and you have too, actually. Everybody has. But one of the places that I go, quote unquote, in consciousness, is a waterfall in the moonlight. And I have no idea where this came from, because I don't think I've ever been by a waterfall. I may not have ever even really been at a waterfall at any time of day. I haven't been to Niagara Falls. I haven't been to Victoria Falls or Angel Falls or any of the falls in Central Texas that I can recall. And I definitely haven't been there at night. But there's this waterfall in the moonlight. And the moonlight, get a little poetic with you here, the moonlight dances off the droplets of water in the waterfall. You can picture this, right? It's kind of like this shimmery, crystalline sort of image. And there's a sense of peace, and there's a sense of overwhelming astonishment, overwhelming awe, like something something so profound is happening here. And yet, it has no, in that moment, practical application. You see? I'm not like, I could drink from the waterfall, I could take pictures of the waterfall, I could invite my friends to the water. It's none of that. There's no agenda around the waterfall. It's just, I'm there. And where am I? Well, it's to my left. I'm sort of here. I'm not sure what I'm standing on. I have no idea how I got there, if I trudged there physically or just am deposited there by spirit. But here's this thing, and how long am I there? Until I start doing what I just did, analyzing it. When I start analyzing this, and I always do, it tells me time's up. And the waterfall goes away, and it's ordinary reality. A lot of times this happens in the waking, sleeping. I forget the name of that. There's a term for that. They'll find it for you. There's a psychological or say it again? Hypnagogic. Thank you. Hypnagogic. The hypnagogic state. Thank you very much for that. Who was it? Mesmer, Anton Mesmer, or Emil Coué, one of those fellows wrote a lot. And Swedenborg, Emanuel Swedenborg, yeah, wrote about that, the hypnagogic state. It's in that window of time as your wakefulness turns to sleep. And that's very often where this image occurs to me. And it's not the only image, it's not the only landscape, but it's one I choose to share with you. Because you don't want to share this stuff indiscriminately, which is not to say you're an indiscriminate group or those of you online, but you want to play your cards close to the vest when it comes to the things that you do in your own deep spiritual practice. It doesn't all have to be laid out there. So this is one I feel comfortable sharing. It's a place where I go. And again, what happens there is less explainable than what doesn't happen there. There's nothing I have to do with this thing. And it didn't even come to me, because I've been going there a really long time, it didn't even come to me as fodder for a talk, which a lot of stuff does because I ask it to. You know, I'll tell Spirit, I say, I have to go speak to this group of people. And, I need something to say that's not just the same old, and especially that's going to connect with people and help them. And stuff falls off bookshelves. That's how it works. But not this. See, this thing didn't come for you. It came for me. And your spiritual dimension comes for you and not for anyone else. Not your children, not your parents, not your partner, nobody but you. And that's how we individualize the infinite. This is what we're doing in this form of spiritual practice, is we're individualizing the infinite, or we're personalizing the impersonal, is another way to put it. We're taking an abstraction and making it real. See, Emmet Fox, whose work I love, in a little booklet called The Golden Key, had a quick, almost meme-like solution to whatever ails you. He said, think about God. If it's this kind of problem or that kind of problem, or you're not even sure what kind of problem it is, you're confused, you're in doubt, you're sick, you're unhappy, you're tired, you're miserable, you're poor, whatever, think about God. Think about God. And it's great advice. The challenge that people have with it is, well, what do I think about God? What is God? God seems like an abstraction. I've never seen God. And so where a lot of us go through tradition and habit is we go to God being a big, overblown, human-looking thing, right? Father God, Mother Goddess, same difference, really. It's humanoid, so it has mood swings and it has all of the capacities that humans have. What this spiritual practice of awe and astonishment is suggesting instead is to create a different template that doesn't have that level of relationship with you, is rather a context and not a relationship. Because relationships are based on personality, personalities teed up by ego. Relationships are wonderful, but you need something that can absolutely love unconditionally, and I have yet to meet the person who can do that. Because unconditional love requires the absence of conditions. And in human relationships, we have conditions. You're my friend. That's the condition. Okay? You're my friend. That's a different condition than you're a total stranger to me. We love differently. Every parent loves their children more than they love other people's children. They just do, you know? And so that's how I'm not saying it's not great love. I'm not saying it's wonderful love. I'm not saying it's not the love of poetry and song, you know, down through the ages. What I am saying is it's not unconditional. Unconditional love is a love that just pours itself out equally across the landscape. And that's what astonishment can do. That's what this nature can do. That's what this forest can do. She goes on to say our imagination fails. She's going to jump metaphors here with you. Our imagination fails us before the vast immensity of the... Oh, wait, I skipped something. And I thought of us. She uses the word man because it was a convention at the time. I'm going to make it, and I thought of us, intent upon affairs, and how often for us also life is too big, too magnificent, too marvelous. We gaze out upon the universe, in the sky a multitude of stars. Science tells us that the nearest of them is 25 million miles away. I think they're further than that, but anyway. That every galactic system contains thousands of millions of stars, and that 2 million of such systems are known. It is inconceivable. Our imagination fails us before the vast immensity of the picture. Yet here we are, in infinitesimal fragment upon a tiny earth, pushing and pulling and hurrying and hurting our fellow humans. Are we not to the universe as the ants are to the trees? Yet not entirely, for within us lies the urge, the power, the ability to comprehend. Through the ages, our minds have reached out with increasing clarity not only to grasp a concept of the immensity, the marvelous mechanism of this material universe, but to seek our unity with the wondrousness of its creator, with God, with life itself. So we gaze out at the night sky. That's the signature of the deity out there. We have no explanation for it. What the ancients did, they developed it into constellations, you know, and they built a zodiac, and we tell ourselves stories about that. That's a beautiful and wonderful thing to do because it's a way of engagement. But it's also not locked in the way that I'm not locked into the inner healing experience by having to keep my hand on my chest the whole time. In other words, we let the thing just sort of wash over us, and we take away from it what we do. We interpret it ourselves. I remember there's Danielle likes Peanuts, the cartoon. I don't know if you like the nuts too, but the cartoon. We talked about this at Christmas because Jeffrey was playing Charlie Brown Christmas, and there's a panel in the Peanuts cartoon from a long time ago. Charlie Brown and Linus. They're laying on a hill on their backs, the two of them, gazing up at the afternoon sky and the clouds going by. And Charlie Brown says, "Oh, it's amazing to see what you can spot in the clouds, how the clouds, tell stories." And he says, "So, what do you see, Linus?" And Linus says, "I see Botticelli's The Birth of Venus." "What do you see, Charlie Brown?" And Charlie Brown says, "Well, I was going to say I saw a horsey and a doggy, but I changed my mind, So some of us look out and we tell complicated narrative stories, and others of us are like, all it says is yes. All it says is I am. All it says is you are the beloved. All it says is we each have this is a different talk and a different series probably, but we all have different learning styles, We're visual, or we're auditory, or kinesthetic, or some combination of all of these, But the fact is that the interpretation of the universe, it's up to you. So you stand there and you look at the night sky, you see these stars, they tell you what they tell you, and your takeaway is every bit as valid as anybody else's. one last little passage from her here. Let us pause for that second. Let us pause for that second now and then. Let us pause from our push and pull and hurry. Let us pause in the peace of the forest. Pause in reverence before the mighty majesty of the trees. Pause in awe before the vast immensity of the stars. Pause and in the silence, in the very center of our being, be still for a moment. Let us gladly, joyously, reverently be still and know that I am God. There's a lot being written right now about artificial intelligence. Nobody knows where that's going to go, how that's going to play out, what challenges it may pose, what benefits it may bring. Here's what doesn't change: divine intelligence. Divine intelligence back of all artificial intelligence, all manufactured intelligence, all interpretive intelligence, back of it all is divine intelligence. There is a place where you can go, if you take nothing more away from this talk than this, there's a place where you can go in consciousness that you carry with you, that you decorate and you paint and you adorn and so on, that is your private space that you take with you where you go, that you can step into to be reminded that you are enough. A lot of times we think, well, I'm going to be reminded about what God is and what I should do and what my life's purpose is. That's not what happens in this space. All of that is ego process. Perfectly valid, perfectly fine, and it's not what I'm talking about. In this space, all that is told of you, all that is told to you, all that comes through you, is that you are enough just the way you are. And what you choose to do about that is your business and a separate issue, that you are just enough. In this way, knowing this, possessing this, and connecting with this on a regular basis, you can take it with you on your journey through life, much the way on this day that we mark, Jesus the Christ, the great teacher, took it with him. On a big triumphant day, I was reading the history of palms, as in trees and leaves, and how they go back to ancient Egypt as a sign of triumph, as a sign of winning applause, like a laurel, crown of laurel leaves and so on. And so on this day, you know, Jesus, oh, Master, Hosanna to the King in the highest, and so on, and they're throwing these things down in front of him. And you know what I think he said inside himself? Yeah, you know, had a steadiness of spirit, because he sensed all this was about to change. He sensed all of this was about to, the floor was going to fall away in his material experience in a very short period of time. But he trusted in something. Through triumph, through praise, through people streaming out to meet him and bring out their sick for healing, through that, all through his torture and his execution and his resurrection and ultimately his ascension, everything that came, there was a lifeline that he held on to. There was a place that he went in consciousness. They describe a garden that he knelt in, which is an actual physical garden, but I think he had a garden. In fact, there's a beautiful song, there is a garden. You all have done that here. There is, I forget who that's by, and then the old hymn, I come to the garden alone when the dew is still.
Eddie Watkins Jr.
Eddie Watkins Jr., there is a garden. Yeah. Hey, next week.
Stay tuned.
You know the old hymn, I come to the garden alone while the dew is still on the roses, and the voice I hear falling on my ear, I'm not going to sing it for you. The voice I hear falling on my ear, the Son of God discloses. And he walks with me, and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own. And the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known. Thank you. Thank you, Kimberly. What are you doing next week? So, I recited that first verse of that one Wednesday night for a man who attended here for years, who's since passed. And he just like somebody who came in today who told me that they have a seat in the 5th row, seat 2, Section A. This man always, whether it was Sunday or Wednesday, sat in the same seat. If it was Sunday, he might have to edge somebody out of it, but he always sat over there. And I recited what I just did on a Wednesday night, and I looked over at him, and he was crying. He said, my mother used to sing that to me. And she had passed not long before, you know. Well, anyway, this garden. This is the place, the garden in which Christ was let down by his centuries, you know. This place where he went, they call it the agony in the garden. This place, this garden, had a presence within him that he carried with him. That when agony occurred in physicality, such agony was not possible in spirituality. And this is where he lived. This is where he had to have lived in consciousness. And because we look at him in a teaching like this one as the great example, not the great exception, but the great example of what we all can become, it tells us we have the same toolkit. We come equipped, factory installed, you know, with the same options as he had. And that's this imaginary place that we go in mind that is our connection to the infinite. So let's know together now, one life, one power, one presence, all there is, all there needs to be. It is enough, and because it is enough, I am enough, and you are enough, and each of us is enough to be exactly who we are. And as we accept this, we find there's a trickle-down benefit in our experience. We no longer have to work so hard to earn our keep in our own minds. We no longer are driven through life to achieve and acquire, to become enough. Instead, that's the place we start from. That's the context of our lives, is this enoughness. And so we bring that into what we do. We bring it into our art of life. We bring it into our speech, our actions, our dealings with one another, easily and fluidly. For it bespeaks the spiritual realm whence we came. And I affirm and know for each one of us, it's easy now to trust this as we cultivate the habit of visiting this place in consciousness, letting it unfold around us in wonderful, mysterious ways, releasing the obsessive tendency to analyze it, and knowing that when that analysis begins in us, we've had enough for the moment of this sacred place within, and now it's time to face outward and meet life on its terms, yet never forgetting what we have seen, what we have been shown, the awe that we feel, the beauty of it all. For this knowing and its manifestation in form in our lives on a moment-by-moment basis, I am so deeply grateful. I release this word now into the infinite, calling it done, and so it is.
Makes her way to the back. I would like to ask, is there anyone here for the first time today? Welcome, everyone, again for being here and being back. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your energy. Thank you for your support in all the many facets that you bring to us, whether it's your presence, whether it is your monetary donations, whether it is your volunteer service. We are grateful for you. So thank you. And I invite you to say with me, divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all the good I am and have, all the good I give and receive. I am prosperous now, and so it is.
my responsibilities. I will tell you, as Jesse mentioned, his Moonlight waterfall, I have a place that I go, and it's not a real place, but it's a real place when I need to let stuff go. It's also waterfalls. Go figure. And water is emotion, so that's particularly apropos. But it's got a nice mossy bank, and then there's a little bit of a waterfall here coming down, and then it's fairly quiet right through here, and then there's another waterfall here. But what I can do is step off the mossy bank, and it's only ankle deep, and the water is comfortable. And I can literally stand ankle deep in this water looking at this waterfall and then hearing the other one, and anything that I need to let go of, I can just drop in that water. Because that water is going to carry it down over the next waterfall, and it's not going to come back. So I'm betting that you have lots of places like this in your head that you're not even aware of. So they're definitely God places. I encourage you to go look. And right now I'm also going to encourage you to hold the people of Arkansas and Mississippi and all of those states in your heart space. The spring weather has been dramatic, and that's all I'm going to say about it. So as we go into treatment, please hold the people who have been dealing with this weather in your heart space, and so that we know the peace and the love and the comfort and the mobilization of resources. I'm a big believer in resource management, so the mobilization of resources to support whatever it is that they've got going on. So know with me that there is one life, one power, one presence, one love. And each and every one of us live that life. We are divine channels for that power. We are divine channels for that love. And we are that presence. And so in that knowing, we reach out our metaphysical arms and into that divine heart space and hold all of the people all over the world who have had dramatic springtimes. We hold them in that love. We hold them in that peace. We hold them in that comfort. We hold them as they take on their healing. And that they reassert for themselves who they are. So that they know, as we know, that we are all beloved children of God. That we are divine sparks, and through us, as that channel for love, anything is possible. And everything is possible. And so we know that resources are on their way, and that there are physical arms to hold them as we hold them metaphysically. And we know that as we move through the spring, that the weather becomes less dramatic and more growth and peace and gentle rains and easy spring breezes ushering into what the summer will be. And I know this with all of the gratitude in my being. I am grateful for a teaching that teaches me not what to believe, but to know who I am. And to know what I can do. And to know who each and every one of you are. I am grateful for this community. I am grateful for our musicians, our practitioners, our ministers. I am grateful for each and every one of you. And I am grateful because gratitude is just another word for love. And I relax into this knowing and release this into the law with love. And so it is.
Something wonderful is happening through me. I feel it in my body. I feel it in my mind. I feel it in everything I am. I choose it. I trust it. I use it. I love it.